The text message buzzes against my palm at precisely 6:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary moment when life-altering news often arrives. I stand frozen in my Des Moines apartment, barefoot on hardwood floors that need sweeping, holding the cream envelope addressed to my brother Jonah in one hand and my phone in the other. Hey Faye, just for your information, Marin's hosting a dinner the night of my wedding for immediate family. No hard feelings about the ceremony, church rules, you know. My phone buzzes again. You're still welcome at the reception. The blue dress hangs from my closet door, purchased last weekend after Jonah's promise. I'll make sure you're there this time. The fabric catches the evening light through my window, transforming it into something almost magical, like the promises I've believed my entire life. I read the message 3 more times, each word burning deeper. Church rules. Immediate family. No hard feelings. 4 weddings. 4 exclusions. The apartment fills with a silence so complete, I can hear the neighbor's television through the wall, the muffled laughter of a sitcom audience. My fingers hover over the phone screen, the cursor blinking in the empty response field. My family photo album sits open on the coffee table. I'd been flipping through it earlier looking for a picture of Jonah and me to include with his gift. The pages display 21 years of carefully curated family history. Rhett's wedding, I was 7, deemed too young to attend. Callum's destination ceremony, adults only. Marin's traditional church wedding, community standards. And now Jonah's final betrayal. In each album, I exist only in the margin holiday gatherings, summer picnics, always slightly out of focus or caught mid-blink. The afterthought child. 6 years younger than Jonah, 12 years younger than Rhett. Born when my parents had believed their family complete. I place the phone on the counter, my movements deliberate. Instead of crying, instead of typing the desperate plea that rises in my throat, I walk to the closet. With steady hands, I remove the blue dress from its prominent display and hang it deep in the back, behind winter coats and forgotten formal wear. The buzzing starts again, incoming messages from family members. I don't need to read them to know their contents. Mom's apologetic explanation. Dad's gruff. That's just how these things are done. Perhaps Marin offering vague sympathy while reinforcing the exclusion. For 28 years, I've been Faye Langdon, the family afterthought. The one who wouldn't remember it anyway, or wouldn't understand the significance. The one whose inclusion required too many explanations, too many adjustments, too much effort. I delete Jonah's message without responding. 4 weddings, 4 exclusions. I announce to my empty apartment. The sound of my voice startles me with its clarity, its absence of tears. I won't be asking for a 5th chance. My phone lights up with my mother's name. I silence it and return to the coffee table, closing the photo album with a soft thud. The family hierarchy established itself long before I had language to question it. Rhett, the golden firstborn, corporate executive with the perfect family and perfect lawn, whose wedding reception photos show my parents beaming with pride. Callum, the charming adventurer, whose destination wedding became a family vacation I watched through social media posts. Marin, the church pillar, who deferred to community standards when excluding me from her ceremony. And Jonah, the supposed peacemaker, whose broken promise now hangs in my closet. Then there's me, Faye, the afterthought child whose existence has always been qualified. You're invited, but you can come, except you wouldn't remember anyway. My living room window frames the Des Moines skyline, lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settles. 3 weeks until Jonah's wedding. 3 weeks to decide whether I'd still be attending the reception I was grudgingly invited to. The envelope addressed to Jonah sits on my counter, the wedding gift receipt folded neatly beside it. A stand mixer in the exact shade of blue that matched Claire's kitchen I'd asked her, specifically, wanting my gift to be thoughtful rather than obligatory. My logistics planner lies open on the kitchen table, next to takeout containers from dinner. I've always found comfort in organization, in systems that follow predictable patterns. My life operates on carefully calibrated schedules and reasonable expectations, except when it comes to family. Another text arrives, this one from Jonah. Did you get my message? Mom's worried. Of course she is. Not worried about my feelings, worried about my reaction. Worried I might disrupt the carefully maintained family dynamic where exclusion is accepted with a smile and heartbreak is hidden behind no hard feelings. I place my palm against the cool surface of my refrigerator, steadying myself. The magnet from Callum's honeymoon slides to the floor. I leave it there. The apartment feels suddenly too small. The walls close, the air thick. I unlock my balcony door and step outside. May evening air fills my lungs, carrying the scent of the flowering trees from the park across the street. Below, people walk dogs, hold hands, live lives uncomplicated by family hierarchies that place them forever at the bottom. My phone buzzes again on the counter inside. I don't turn back. I had no idea that Jonah's broken promise would be the last family obligation I'd ever accept. Standing on that balcony, watching strangers move through their Tuesday evening routines, something shifts inside me, the quiet crack of a dam that's held back 28 years of careful accommodation. The realization arrives without fanfare. I am allowed to stop waiting for inclusion that never comes. 3 weeks until Jonah's wedding. 3 weeks to decide whether I'd still be attending the reception I was grudgingly invited to. But in this moment, with the evening air cool against my face and the weight of that blue dress hanging in my closet, I already know my answer. 12 hours after Jonah's text, I sat alone in my living room with 21 years of family photo albums spread around me. The leather-bound volumes formed a semicircle on my carpet, their edges perfectly aligned a habit from my work in logistics. Outside, Des Moines settled into late evening darkness, while I conducted my own inventory of absence. My fingers traced the embossed date on the oldest album, 2001, the year of Rhett's wedding. I flipped to that weekend, where glossy photos captured my parents in their finest clothes, my brothers in matching tuxedos, Marin in her bridesmaid dress. I stood in our driveway in my nightgown, watching my parents drive away to Rhett's rehearsal dinner. We'll bring you cake, Mom promised as Dad backed the car out. Mrs. Kellerman from next door waved from her porch, where she'd be watching me for the evening. They forgot the cake. The photos showed no trace of a 7-year-old girl waiting up past midnight. I moved to the next album, Callum's destination wedding in Cancun. Adults only, the invitation specified, though I'd seen photos of his wife's young nieces as flower girls. 16 at the time, I'd stayed with Aunt Patricia, while my parents and siblings spent a week at the resort. The group photos showed tanned faces and colorful cocktails. I closed that album with a snap. Marin's wedding filled the third album. At 17, I'd written her a letter, making my case for inclusion. I understand the ceremony now. I would sit quietly, please. Her response came on monogram stationery. It's not about you, sweetie. The church elders feel strongly about this. The math had become simple. 21 years of being the family afterthought. 4 wedding ceremonies where my presence would somehow diminish the occasion. Every holiday spent at the kids' table, even now at 28. Not one sibling who had ever challenged the hierarchy that placed me permanently at the bottom. My phone lit up with another text from my mother. Jonah feels terrible, honey, but these traditions are important. Family means accepting these little disappointments. Little disappointments. The phrase hung in the air of my apartment. I pulled the most recent album toward me, last Christmas. The official family portrait showed us arranged by height and importance. Rhett and his wife centered, flanked by their teenage sons. Callum and his wife to the right. Marin, her husband and their daughter to the left. Jonah and Claire behind them. My parents were seated in front. Me standing slightly apart, as if I'd been added as an afterthought, which, of course, I had been. Was this really what 28 years had led to? A woman who still waited for permission to be included in her own family's milestones. The apartment suddenly felt too small. I grabbed my phone and walked to the window, pressing Jessica's contact before I could reconsider. "Faye?" She answered on the second ring, her voice alert despite the hour. "Everything okay?" Jonah uninvited me from his wedding ceremony. The words tumbled out. "Church rules, apparently. I'm allowed at the reception." A long silence followed. Then, "I've been waiting for this call for years, Faye." "What?" "The call where you finally admit your family treats you like garbage." Jessica's voice softened. "What are you going to do about it?" I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my window. "I don't know." "Yes, you do," she said. "You wouldn't have called otherwise." She was right. In my bedroom, the logistics planner lay open on my nightstand. The pages contained precise notations. Savings account, $31,640. Remaining lease term, 8 months. Upcoming holidays. Color coded by family obligation. Everything in my life categorized, quantified, and scheduled, including the social ties that would need severing and the expectations I would need to shed. 20 days until Jonah's wedding reception, I said, more to myself than to Jessica. 20 days to decide whether to show up one last time or close this chapter entirely. "That's not a decision, Faye. That's a countdown." Jessica's voice carried no judgment. "What do you want me to do?" The question startled me. No one in my family had ever asked what I wanted. "Come over tomorrow with coffee?" I finally said. "I need to return a stand mixer." Sleep came in fragments that night. I dreamed of ceremonies happening behind doors I couldn't open, of running down church aisles that stretched endlessly before me. At dawn, I sat up, suddenly alert. The decision had crystallized overnight, simple and clear as the morning light filtering through my blinds. Next morning, at my desk, I opened my planner and drew a single, firm line through Jonah's wedding date. My email to my mother took 3 minutes to compose. "I won't be attending the reception. I wish Jonah and Claire all the best." No explanation, no apology. The brevity felt strange after a lifetime of careful justifications for my feelings. When Jessica arrived at 9, she carried coffee and a sheet of return labels. "Let's redirect that stand mixer to someone who actually invited you to their wedding," she said, setting everything down on my counter. Her eyes traveled to the photo albums, still arranged in their perfect semicircle. "Are you keeping those?" I looked at the careful documentation of my exclusion. Not on display. By sunset, I'd returned Jonah's gift, canceled my time-off request at work, and felt the strange lightness that comes with putting down a burden you've carried too long. The family albums now sat in a box on the top shelf of my closet, not discarded, but no longer defining the center of my living space. The last text I sent that evening wasn't to my family. It was to my supervisor, volunteering for the Denver conference that coincided with Jonah's wedding weekend. Some people mark new beginnings with champagne or ceremonies. I marked mine with logistics. 7 days after declining Jonah's reception invitation, I stand in front of the conference room whiteboard, marker poised between my fingers. My co-workers shuffle papers and tap keyboards around the oval table, waiting for my decision. "I'll take this new Denver assignment," I announce, circling the dates that perfectly overlap with Jonah's wedding weekend. My schedule opened up. Director Whitman raises an eyebrow. "That's the third weekend in May, correct? Didn't you request that time off months ago?" Plans change. I cap the marker with a decisive click that seems to echo in the suddenly quiet room. I've reviewed the quarterly projections. Automation integration can't wait another month. Back at my desk, I open my calendar and block off Denver conference across the wedding dates. The satisfying click as I save the changes releases something tight in my chest, a breath I've been holding for weeks, perhaps years. Later that afternoon, I created a spreadsheet titled Personal Joy Fund. Column A lists projected expenses I would have incurred attending family events for the next year. New outfits, travel costs, obligatory gifts. Column B redirects those funds toward goals I've postponed. Weekend photography, workshop, kitchen renovation, actual vacation days that don't involve folding chairs in someone's backyard. The total at the bottom of the spreadsheet makes me blink. $3,215 annually spent on appearances and inclusion that never quite materialized. I set up an automatic transfer for the first installment and close the file before doubt can creep in. 12 days until I'll be in Denver instead of at that reception. I whisper to my empty cubicle. 10 days to prepare for questions from colleagues about missing such an important family event. The elevator dings on Thursday afternoon as I'm gathering files for the cross-departmental logistics meeting. The doors slide open to reveal a man I recognize from email threads but have never met in person. Eli Garrison, the railroad maintenance planner whose scheduling conflicts have filled my inbox for months. "You must be Faye Langdon," he says, stepping into the hallway. His voice carries the slight raspiness of someone who spends too much time on conference calls. "Your solutions for the Southern Route issue saved my team weeks of manual workarounds." "Just doing my job," I responded, extending my hand. His grip is firm without the overcompensating squeeze so many men in logistics seem to favor. During the meeting, I notice Eli's attention to detail, the way he anticipates problems before others see them coming. When he challenges a delivery timeline proposed by regional, his arguments mirror the concerns I've been hesitant to voice. "Are you free for lunch?" he asks when the meeting adjourns. "There's a deli around the corner that doesn't microwave their sandwiches." The deli buzzes with office workers and the smell of fresh bread. We claim a table by the window where spring sunlight spills across our notepads. "You seem different today," Eli notes, unwrapping his sandwich. "More present." I pause, water glass halfway to my lips. "Different from what?" "Your emails. Always perfect, but carefully neutral." He shrugs. "Today you actually disagreed with Henderson's timeline. I've never seen that before." The observation catches me off guard. Has my family's expectation of compliance seeped into my professional life too? I just made a difficult decision that feels surprisingly right, I admit. Eli nods without pressing for details. "I understand those. Made a few myself." When he mentions his divorce, it comes without the bitter edge I've heard from other separated parents. "My ex-wife and I couldn't make marriage work, but we're committed to parenting together. We have a 7-year-old daughter, Lucy." That sounds challenging, but worthwhile. It is. He takes a sip of his iced tea. "Her birthday's coming up. Small gathering at my place, just people who make Lucy feel seen. That's my only criterion now." His keys clatter against the table when he reaches for his wallet. Among them hangs a small, worn compass with a tarnished brass casing. "Interesting keychain," I commented. Eli smiles, picking it up. "My grandfather gave it to me when I was 10, said it would help me find my way when everyone else's directions got too loud." He holds it out toward me. It's terrible for actual navigation, but perfect for metaphors. The compass needle swings wildly as he tilts it, settling in completely different directions with each movement. I laugh a real laugh that bubbles up unexpectedly. The perfect tool for someone whose job involves plotting accurate routes. Exactly. His eyes crinkle at the corners. When Lucy's grandparents started taking sides after the divorce, blaming me for everything, this old thing reminded me that sometimes you have to find your own true north. The phrase echoes in my mind as we walk back to the office. True north. Not the direction dictated by family hierarchy or tradition, but the path that leads toward genuine connection and respect. For 28 years, I've navigated by other people's expectations. Mom's insistence on family harmony at my expense, Rhett's assumption of authority, Jonah's broken promises. Each exclusion nudged my internal compass until I completely lost sight of my own direction. Back at my desk, I researched the Denver conference location, exploring nearby restaurants and museums. For the first time, a business trip feels like an opportunity rather than an escape. My phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. "Dinner tonight? Need to hear about this Denver conference that rescued you from wedding hell. I type back, absolutely, and I have a spreadsheet you need to see. The compass on Eli's keychain shimmers in my memory as I gather my things to leave. Perhaps it's time I found my own. Weeks after declining Jonah's invitation, while I was presenting at the Denver conference, my phone vibrated in my blazer pocket. I ignored it, pointing to the supply chain disruption map projected on the screen behind me. As you can see, redirecting through these 3 distribution centers reduces transit time by 30%. I clicked to the next slide. Questions before we break for lunch? The buzz against my ribs continued like an angry hornet. Mom's third voicemail today, most likely, or perhaps Rhett, finally stepping in as the family fixer. Their attempts had progressed from confusion to concern to something that sounded dangerously like anger. My colleague Tara raised her hand. What about weather contingencies for the mountain routes? The question anchored me to the present, to this room, to this life I'd chosen instead of standing in the background of Jonah's wedding photos. Excellent point. I expanded the contingency slide. We've accounted for seasonal closures with these alternate pathways. When we broke for lunch, I checked my phone in the hallway. 6 text notifications from the family group chat, now muted but still visible. The preview showed Callum's message. Anyone heard from Faye? Mom's really. I slipped the phone into my pocket without reading the rest. The conference center's massive windows framed the Denver skyline, mountains rising beyond like guardians. The distance between here and Des Moines felt measurable in more than miles. My presentation materials needed reorganizing before the afternoon session. The hotel restaurant would be crowded. I ordered room service instead, a practical decision, not hiding. In my room later that day, I spread papers across the bed, creating new orders from travel-wrinkled pages. My laptop chimed with an email notification. A Facebook tag from Claire, Jonah's new wife. Missing some family members on our perfect day, but so blessed by those who could share it with us. Family first, blessed. The photos showed my siblings arranged around Jonah and Claire on church steps. Everyone wore carefully coordinated smiles. Mom's hand rested on the empty space beside her where I was meant to stand. I closed the laptop, opened it again, typed family estrangement and health into the search bar. The clock read 12:43 a.m. when I finally clicked the first link. Forums appeared, filled with stories from adults creating boundaries with family. Some had cut ties completely. Others maintained careful distance. All described the same pattern of guilt, doubt, and eventual peace. One comment lodged in my chest. You don't need permission to protect your peace. I wrote it on the hotel notepad, the letters pressing deep into the page. Underlined it twice. The window reflected my face against the night sky. Had I overreacted to just being excluded from a few ceremonies? The thought arrived in Mom's voice. Then Rhett's. Then my own, but fainter now. I remembered sitting at the kids' table last Christmas, 28 years old, drinking sparkling cider while my younger nieces and nephews were seated with the adults. The careful way Marin had explained, we needed even numbers at both tables. In the Denver gift shop the next morning, a small brass compass caught my eye. Practical, like the one my father kept in his truck. I bought it, slipped it into my pocket. Almost left it behind when checking out, then returned for it. Not yet. I needed the reminder that I was allowed to choose my own direction. 2 days until returning to Des Moines, I told my reflection as I applied mascara. 2 days to practice responses to inevitable questions about the wedding. The conference's final dinner filled a ballroom with round tables and industry colleagues. Director Whitman sat beside me, nodding as I explained my distribution center proposal. The risk assessment matrix you developed is particularly valuable, she said, cutting her steak. We'd need to adapt it for different regions, of course. I've already started models for the Northwest and Gulf Coast operations. The words emerged without rehearsal or apology. I can have preliminary drafts by next Monday. Her eyebrows lifted. That's a remarkably quick turnaround. I had extra time this weekend. I took a sip of water. I missed my brother's wedding to be here. The admission hung between us. I waited for the drop of my stomach, the flush of guilt. Neither came. Their loss is our gain, then. Director Whitman tapped her glass against mine. Langdon, this is exactly why we needed you on this trip. Something lightened in my chest. Thank you. We should talk about expanding your role when we get back. Regional coordination has your name all over it. The conversation shifted to budget allocations. I contributed without second-guessing each word, without wondering if I was taking up too much space, without apologizing for my presence. If you've ever chosen your self-respect over family obligation at 28, you know exactly how that moment of recognition felt, like breathing without weight for the first time. My phone vibrated as dessert arrived. I glanced down, expecting another family message. Eli Garrison, subject, logistics coordination, follow-up and a question. The preview text appeared beneath his name. Lucy's birthday party this Saturday. Small gathering, good people. You'd fit right in. The chocolate cake before me suddenly seemed more celebration than comfort. I tucked the phone away without responding yet, but the message warmed like the compass in my pocket. Some distances, it seemed, brought you closer to where you belonged. 6 weeks after missing Jonah's wedding, I sat in Dr. Warner's office for our second session. The gentle trickle of her desk fountain provided a backdrop of white noise that somehow made difficult truths easier to speak. The weddings weren't the cause of your decision, Dr. Warner said, adjusting her reading glasses. They were the symptom. Tell me about the first time you felt like an afterthought. I shifted in the leather chair, my fingers automatically reaching for the small compass in my pocket. The question settled between us, heavier than it should have been. Christmas when I was 9, I answered finally. Mom and Dad took the others to the Nutcracker downtown. I found out when Marin was trying on her new dress. When I asked about mine, Mom said, "Oh honey, we thought you were too young to sit through a ballet." Dr. Warner nodded, making a small note. Her office smelled like cinnamon and old books. "And how did that make you feel?" I almost laughed, like I was invisible. I remember standing in the hallway after they left, counting the family pictures on the wall. 23 photos, and I was in 7. Always on the edge, or half cut off. The fountain bubbled, filling our silence. "That's what we call a core memory," Dr. Warner said. "It shapes how we interpret future events. You've been seeing yourself through that lens for 19 years. "But they did exclude me," I countered, leaning forward. 4 weddings. 4 actual, physical exclusions. "Yes," she agreed. "Reality and your perception both exist. The question is, what do you want to do with that information now?" My Saturday mornings had transformed since that first decision to decline Jonah's reception invitation. Instead of driving to family brunches where I inevitably sat at the corner of the table, I now wandered the downtown farmers market, learning the names of local vendors and sampling fresh bread. Weekends that once disappeared into family obligations now stretched before me like blank pages. Last Sunday, Eli had invited me to dinner at his modest bungalow on the east side. His daughter Lucy, a serious 7-year-old with her father's dark curls, had pulled out a chair specifically for me. "Dad says you're good at organizing things," she'd announced, handing me a crayon. "Can you help me color code my rock collection tomorrow?" The simple question had nearly undone me. Tomorrow, as if my presence extended beyond a single obligatory dinner, as if I were someone worth making future plans with. 2 days later, "The compass," Dr. Warner said, nodding toward my hand. "Is it significant?" I pulled it from my pocket, the small brass circle catching the afternoon light from her window. "I bought it in Denver, after the conference. Eli has one his grandfather gave him." "And what does it mean to you?" "That I'm allowed to choose my direction." I ran my thumb over its surface, even when everyone else's opinions get too loud. Dr. Warner smiled. "Keep it close. The hardest part of creating boundaries is maintaining your direction when the winds change." 14 days until Thanksgiving. 14 days to decide whether to accept Mom's tentative invitation or create my own tradition. The thought settled in my stomach like a stone. Thanksgiving? I said, voicing the word like a confession. Mom called yesterday. And how did that conversation go? I told her I needed time to think about it. That's progress, Dr. Warner noted. Setting a boundary doesn't always mean saying no. Sometimes it means not yet, or I'll decide on my own timeline. The fountain gurgled. Outside her window, Des Moines traffic moved in predictable patterns. I wondered how many other people sat in offices like this one, learning to redraw the maps of their lives. Next week at work? Faye Langdon? The receptionist's voice snapped me back to Wednesday afternoon. Marin stood in the waiting room doorway, her camel coat folded over one arm. "What are you doing here?" I asked, rising from my chair. Marin glanced around the crowded waiting room. "Can we talk somewhere private?" The old Faye would have agreed immediately, following Marin to whatever quiet corner she deemed appropriate. That Faye would have accepted whatever terms were offered, grateful for the scrap of attention. "The cafe across the street works," I said instead. "I could use some coffee." Surprise flickered across Marin's face, quickly replaced with resignation. "Fine." Moving to the cafe wasn't just about location, it was reclaiming power. For once, I wouldn't be cornered into a family discussion on someone else's terms. The bustling coffee shop offered neutral territory and witnesses, should I need them. We ordered at the counter, then settled at a small table by the window. Marin stirred her tea, avoiding my eyes. "Mom sent you," I stated, not bothering to phrase it as a question. "No," Marin replied, then sighed. "Well, not exactly. I came to warn you." "About what?" "Mom's planning a surprise family intervention at Thanksgiving dinner. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown." The words should have shocked me, but they arrived with a strange inevitability. Of course they wouldn't respect my need for space. Of course they'd frame my boundaries as a breakdown. I took a slow sip of my coffee, surprised by my own calm. "Thank you for the warning. I won't be attending." Marin's spoon clinked against her cup. "None of us thought you'd actually stay away. It was always just easier to go along with whatever Mom and Rhett decided." "Easier for whom?" "For everyone," she admitted, then winced at my expression. "That came out wrong." "No, it came out honest. They've already planned your forgiveness speech." Marin continued, picking at her napkin. "Rhett wrote talking points for each of us. There's a whole section about how you'll realize family matters more than petty slights." I nearly choked on my coffee. Petty slights? His words, not mine. Was I supposed to cry at the turkey or the pumpkin pie? The question escaped before I could stop it, and for a moment, we stared at each other across the table. Then Marin snorted, a genuine laugh breaking through her perfect composure. I found myself laughing too, the absurdity of the situation suddenly crystal clear. "Probably during the prayer," she answered, wiping her eyes. "Maximum dramatic effect." When our laughter subsided, I straightened in my chair. I won't be attending any family event where I'm seen as a problem to be fixed, rather than a person to be respected. Marin nodded slowly, studying me with new eyes. "You've changed." "No," I corrected her, the compass solid in my pocket. "I've just stopped pretending." The morning of Thanksgiving dawned with Des Moines' first real snowfall, as if the universe were providing perfect cover for my first major holiday alone. Large flakes drifted past my window, accumulating on the railing of my balcony, transforming the city into something unrecognizable. Fitting, since I barely recognized myself these days. "Perfect weather for hiding," I murmured, watching the streets disappear under white. My phone remained silent. No calls from Mom asking what time I'd arrive. No text from Dad with his annual reminder to bring the cranberry sauce no one actually ate. I sipped coffee from a mug Jessica had given me last week. "For your first independent Thanksgiving," the card read. The ceramic felt warm against my palms as I reviewed my plans for the day. 3 hours of volunteering at the Riverside Community Center. Afternoon movie at the theater showing classic films. Evening takeout from Golden Harvest. A holiday built entirely around my choices. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. By 9:30, I stood in the community center's industrial kitchen, tying an apron around my waist. The air smelled of roasting turkey and cinnamon, punctuated by shouts from volunteers calling for more gravy or napkins. "Faye!" Eli waved from across the room where he stirred something in an enormous pot. Lucy sat on a stool beside him, carefully folding napkins into triangles. "You made it through the snow," he called. I navigated between busy volunteers toward them. I walked. Seemed safer than driving. Lucy jumped down from her stool. "Dad says you know about logistics. Can you help us figure out how to serve 400 people without everything getting cold?" I smiled despite my nerves. That's exactly what logistics is for. For an hour, I lost myself in the familiar comfort of organization, arranging serving stations, calculating timing between courses, coordinating volunteers. The kitchen director beamed when I suggested a numbered ticket system to prevent long lines. "Where have you been hiding?" she asked, patting my shoulder. The warmth of the kitchen and the purposeful movement around me loosened something tight in my chest. This felt right. This felt like belonging. Until Marcia, the volunteer coordinator, approached with a clipboard. "Change of plans, Faye. We need someone at the greeting table. Jim called in sick." My stomach dropped. "Greeting table?" "Just inside the main doors. Check people in, answer questions, direct them to open seats. You're so organized, you'll be perfect." The kitchen had felt safe, anonymous. Now I'd be the first face people saw when they entered. What if my family shows up? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Marcia tilted her head. "Then you'll greet them like anyone else." I wanted to explain about the 21 years of being an afterthought, about 4 wedding exclusions, about the planned intervention at the family dinner I'd declined to attend. But the words clumped in my throat. "Sure," I said instead. "I can handle greeting." The community center doors opened with a distinctive electronic chime that sent a jolt through my system each time. I plastered on a smile and welcomed an elderly couple, a single mother with 3 children, and a group of college students far from home. The rhythm of greeting strangers calmed my nerves. I checked names, assigned table numbers, answered questions about restroom locations and the day's menu. "You're good at this," Eli said, appearing beside me with a fresh stack of programs. Lucy trailed behind him, now wearing a paper pilgrim hat. "It's just logistics with people instead of shipping routes," I replied. The door chimed again. I looked up and smiled ready. The smile froze on my face. Rhett stood framed in the doorway, snow melting on the shoulders of his camel hair coat. Behind him, his wife Margaret adjusted her scarf while their teenage sons stomped snow from their boots. 21 years of conditioning screamed at me to apologize for the spill, for my absence at the wedding, for daring to exist in public instead of accepting my role at the family intervention. The serving spoon I'd been holding clattered to the floor, splashing gravy across my volunteer apron. The dark stain spread across the blue fabric like a Rorschach test of my panic. For 17 excruciating seconds, I stood frozen. The silence expanded until it felt physical, pressing against my skin. Rhett's expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. Margaret's eyebrows lifted toward her hairline. My fingers found the small compass in my apron pocket. The metal felt cool against my sweaty palm. I took a deep breath, bent to retrieve the fallen spoon, and wiped my apron with a napkin from the stack. One step forward, then another. I picked up the clipboard from the greeting table and stepped toward my brother. "Welcome to Community Thanksgiving," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "How many at your party today?" Rhett blinked. "Faye, we didn't expect." "4," Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp. "We didn't expect to see you here." I nodded, marking the number on my sheet. Table 12 has space for 4. They're serving turkey and ham, with vegetarian options available at the South Buffet. My oldest brother looked as if I'd started speaking another language. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Mom said you were going through something, he finally managed. I felt a flicker of anger burn through the fear. I'm going through Thanksgiving, Rhett, just like everyone else here. His teenage sons shifted uncomfortably behind him. I remembered being their age, watching adult tensions from the periphery, never quite understanding the currents. Miss Faye? Lucy appeared suddenly at my side, her paper hat slightly askew. Dad needs help with the dessert table. He said it's a logistics emergency. I glanced down at her, catching the solemn look in her eyes that didn't match her cheerful tone. At 7, she'd already mastered the art of strategic interruption. Please follow the volunteers to your table, I told Rhett's family, handing them programs. Happy Thanksgiving. I turned away before they could respond, Lucy's small hand slipping into mine as we walked toward the dessert table where Eli stood arranging pies. There wasn't really an emergency, was it? I whispered to her. Lucy shook her head. Dad said your face looked like when I had to talk to Mom's new boyfriend, like you needed a reason to walk away. 3 hours left in my volunteer shift. 3 hours to navigate this unexpected collision of worlds. Thank you, I told her. That was good logistics. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of serving, cleaning, and carefully navigating the room to avoid Rhett's family. They left after an hour, Rhett looking back twice before Margaret ushered him through the door. By evening, snowflakes had resumed their silent descent as Eli walked me to my car in the community center parking lot. That was your brother, he said, not a question. I nodded, unlocking my car door with fingers still smelling of turkey and cranberry sauce. Lucy wants to know if you're free for Christmas Eve, he continued, breath fogging in the cold air. Her grandparents are coming and she thinks you'd balance out the table. The invitation hung between us, as delicate as the snowflakes swirling in the parking lot lights. My thumb pressed against the alarm button on my key fob. The car erupted in a cacophony of honking and flashing lights, startling us both. Eli jumped back, then burst into laughter. Despite everything the surprise encounter, the gravy stain still damp on my apron, the emotional exhaustion, I found myself laughing too. I finally silenced the alarm, the sudden quiet almost as startling as the noise had been. Christmas Eve, I repeated, the words visible in the cold air. I'd like that. The text message from Eli arrived at 10:17 a.m. on Friday, 24 hours after his unexpected Christmas invitation. Lucy says she'll save you a seat at the kids' table. Her words, not mine. A sunbeam caught the screen as I read it, warming my palm through the phone case. Before I could respond, 3 sharp knocks rattled my apartment door. I knew that knock, precise, authoritative, expecting immediate response. My mother's knock. Christmas carols drifted through the wall from my neighbor's apartment, the cheerful melodies a stark contrast to the sudden tightness in my chest. I slipped the phone into my pocket and crossed the living room, each step measured and deliberate. She stood in the hallway wearing her camel wool coat with the tortoiseshell buttons, the one reserved for church services and important confrontations. Her silver hair fell in the perfect waves that cost $85 every 6 weeks at Marlene's salon. Faye. Her voice carried the practiced neutrality of a woman accustomed to containing emotions in public spaces. May I come in? I stepped aside without speaking. The scent of Chanel No. 5 followed her into my apartment, the same perfume I'd given her last Christmas from all 4 siblings, though only I had selected it. Coffee? I asked, closing the door. That would be lovely. My hands performed the familiar ritual filter, grounds, water while my mind raced ahead, mapping possible conversations and exits. The kitchen clock read 10:32 a.m. Jessica would arrive at 12:30 for our planned vintage shopping excursion. 2 hours to either re-establish old patterns or maintain my new boundaries. I placed 2 mugs on the coffee table and sat in the armchair, leaving her the couch. "We missed you yesterday," she said, adjusting her sleeve. "The boys asked where you were." Rhett's sons, my nephews, teenagers now, with their father's height and their mother's dark eyes. They hadn't texted me directly since my birthday 8 months ago. "I volunteered at the community dinner," I replied, curling my fingers around the warm ceramic. "It was lovely." "That's nice." Her lips pursed slightly. "I didn't know you did volunteer work." "There's a lot we don't know about each other." The silence expanded between us. Through the wall, Bing Crosby crooned about white Christmases while snow accumulated on my windowsill in delicate ridges. "Your father wondered if you'd received his voicemails." She stirred her untouched coffee. "He's called several times." "I received them." And? "And I've been busy." Her fingers tightened around the spoon. "Too busy for family?" "Too busy for conversations that go nowhere." She placed the spoon on the table with mathematical precision. "We had the family gathering as planned yesterday. Everyone was there. The intervention. The one Marin had warned me about. I hope it was nice." "It was." She paused, searching for the right word. "Incomplete." I sipped my coffee, letting the bitter warmth spread through my chest. Outside, a cardinal landed on my fire escape, a splash of vivid red against winter white. "The thing is," she continued, her voice taking on the practiced cadence of a rehearsed speech, "everyone had prepared something to say to you, words of reconciliation, understanding." Understanding. The word hung in the air between us like frost. "Let me guess," I said. "Rhett prepared a lecture on family responsibility. Callum had anecdotes about forgiveness from his travels, and Dad planned to remind me that family trumps personal feelings." Her shoulders stiffened. "It wasn't like that." "Wasn't it?" The cardinal flew away, leaving only disturbed snow in its wake. "Marin said you wouldn't come," she finally admitted. "She told everyone we needed to respect your decision. No one believed her." I imagined them sitting around the formal dining table, empty chair conspicuous, prepared speeches withering on their tongues. The thought should have satisfied something in me. Instead, I felt hollow. "Did you prepare a speech too, Mom?" Her gaze dropped to her lap. "I thought you'd be there. You've always been there." The unspoken truth hovered between us. I'd always been there because no one expected otherwise. The reliable afterthought. The guaranteed attendance. The background presence in family photographs, slightly out of focus. "What will people think, Faye?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A family divided like this?" The question scraped against something raw inside me. 28 years of the same concern appearances, community standing, social perception. "They'll think exactly what they've always thought." I answered, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "That I'm not really part of this family. The only difference is now I agree with them." Her head snapped up. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I leaned forward. 4 weddings, Mom, 4 ceremonies where I wasn't welcome. 4 times I was told to understand, to accept, to show up anyway for the parts where I was permitted. 4 times I did exactly that. Those were circumstances beyond. Beyond your control? Nothing was beyond your control. Not once did any of you say, "If Faye isn't welcome at the ceremony, we'll have a different ceremony." Not once. Her lips trembled. "You're being unfair." "No," I said quietly. Unfair was teaching me that family means showing up no matter what, then demonstrating repeatedly that the rule didn't apply when it came to me. Outside, snow fell steadily, muffling the Saturday morning traffic. My phone vibrated in my pocket, probably Jessica confirming our plans. The neighbor's Christmas music had shifted to "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," the melancholy notes seeping through the wall. "Will you come for Christmas?" Her voice cracked slightly on the question. For a moment, I saw her not as my mother but as a woman in her 70s, confronting the consequences of decades of small exclusions she'd permitted or participated in. "I have plans with people who've made space for me without conditions," I said gently. "That's what I need right now." "What about New Year's? Your father always makes his special." "Mom," I set my mug down. I'm not negotiating for inclusion anymore. She gathered her purse with trembling fingers. I should go. I walked her to the door, maintaining the polite choreography we'd perfected over decades. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. Is this permanent, Faye? The question contained layers. Was I permanently estranged? Permanently unwilling to accommodate? Permanently changed from the daughter who accepted scraps of inclusion with gratitude? I don't know, I answered honestly, but I do know I can't go backward. She nodded once, a quick downward jerk of her chin. Your father and I love you. I know you do, I said. In your way. When I closed the door behind her, I realized Amanda's casual cruelty at Jonah's wedding had been right in one way. I could disappear from their lives, and while they might notice, nothing fundamental would change for them. The difference was, everything had changed for me. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood of the door, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. My phone buzzed again. This time I pulled it out. A text from Jessica. On my way early, bringing reinforcements, wine. And beneath it, still unanswered, Eli's message about Lucy saving me a seat at the kids' table. I typed a response with steady fingers. Tell her I'd be honored. The kids' table always has the best conversations anyway. 6 months after that first missed family wedding, I stood watering the basil plants on my new apartment balcony. Morning sunlight caught the spray, creating momentary rainbows that dissolved almost as quickly as they formed. Below, Des Moines stirred to weekend life. Joggers along the river path, couples walking dogs, a father teaching his daughter to ride a bike without training wheels. The promotion to regional logistics coordinator had come through last month. My new place, 12 blocks from the old one but worlds away in terms of space and light, offered a view that stretched beyond cramped brick walls to the gentle curve of the Des Moines River. Worth every penny of the salary increase. Is the coffee ready yet? Jessica called from inside, her voice mixing with the sounds of Lucy's giggles and Eli's terrible rendition of some 80s rock song. Almost, I answered, giving the basil one final spritz before stepping back inside. My kitchen. Not just a kitchen, but my kitchen, designed with intention rather than necessity, buzzed with Saturday morning energy. Jessica arranged pastries from her bakery on a platter, while Eli flipped pancakes, and Lucy set the table with meticulous attention to fork placement. Miss Faye, did you water your plants? Can I water them next time? Lucy looked up from her task, eyes bright with the privilege of potential responsibility. Absolutely. The mint especially loves your touch. I squeezed her shoulder as I passed, noticing how naturally the gesture came now. 6 months ago, I would have hesitated, calculating whether physical affection was appropriate or expected. The thought of those calculations, the endless internal spreadsheets of acceptable behavior I'd maintained for 28 years, struck me suddenly. I paused, coffee pot in hand, as the realization settled. I hadn't run those numbers in months. Earth to Faye, Eli said, waving a spatula. The pancakes demand your attention. I poured coffee into waiting mugs, breathing in the rich aroma that had replaced the knot of Sunday anxiety. No more dreading the weekly family call where I'd inevitably hear about gatherings I hadn't been invited to or decisions made without my input. You're doing the thing again? Jessica said, bumping my hip with hers as she reached for the cream. The thing where you disappear into your head and look surprised to find yourself exactly where you are. Just appreciating the view, I replied, gesturing toward my refrigerator. Where once I'd kept family photos and wedding invitations secured with magnets, now hung Lucy's crayon portrait of the 4 of us, my promotion certificate, and a calendar marked with real commitments, the community garden planning committee, Jessica's baking competition, Lucy's upcoming school play. Speaking of views, Eli said, sliding pancakes onto plates. Lucy got her part in the play yesterday. Tell Faye who you're playing, kiddo. Lucy straightened, her face solemn with the weight of theatrical responsibility. I'm playing the tree that changes colors with the seasons. I have 14 lines and 3 costume changes. Miss Reynolds says I need to project to the back row. That's quite an important role, I said, matching her seriousness. Trees are the witnesses to everything that happens in a forest. That's exactly what I told Grandma Miller when she said trees don't talk. Lucy nodded vigorously. And guess what? I got 4 tickets for opening night. The casual mention of tickets. 4. Not the obligatory 2 that acknowledged parents but excluded others. Squeezed something in my chest. Such a small thing, this thoughtful inclusion, yet it represented everything my childhood had lacked. Who are you inviting? Jessica asked, pouring syrup with surgical precision onto her stack. Lucy ticked off on her fingers. Dad, Grandma and Grandpa Miller, and Miss Faye. She looked at me anxiously. You'll come, right? It's 30 days away, on a Thursday. Eli caught my eye over Lucy's head, his expression carefully neutral, giving me space to decline if needed. But the warmth spreading through my chest needed no deliberation. I wouldn't miss it for anything, I promised. I'll even bring flowers for the star. Not roses, Lucy said quickly. The boy who plays the rabbit is allergic. We settled around my table, a farmhouse-style piece I'd found at an antique store, and refinished myself over 3 weekends. Sunlight streamed through windows I'd finally hung proper curtains on rather than the temporary blinds I'd lived with for years. Halfway through breakfast, my fingers brushed the compass now attached to my keychain beside the new apartment key. The metal had warmed against my leg, no longer the cold talisman of uncertain direction but a reminder of choices made and kept. The woman in my bathroom mirror now looked directly at herself, instead of searching for family resemblance or approval. My hair hung loose today instead of pulled back in the severe ponytail that had been my armor in family gatherings. I donated the blue dress bought for Jonah's wedding to a women's career closet, where someone else might wear it to an interview or meeting where they were genuinely wanted. The photo albums that had once dominated my coffee table now rested in a storage box in my hallway closet, not discarded, but no longer central to my daily view. In their place sat books I actually enjoyed, a half-finished puzzle, and plants that thrived under my care. Tell them about the Richardson account? Eli prompted as we cleared breakfast dishes together, his shoulder brushing mine in the comfortable choreography we'd developed. Landed it yesterday, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Biggest client the firm has taken on this year. They specifically requested me after the Denver presentation. Jessica raised her coffee mug in salute. To logistics, magic, and knowing your worth. Healing wasn't about forgiveness or revenge. It was about finally recognizing that I deserved to be where I was wanted, not where I was merely tolerated. My siblings had receded from daily thoughts, becoming characters in a story I'd lived through rather than active presences in my life. The buzz of my phone interrupted the moment. I glanced down at the screen, surprised to see Marin's name appear for the first time in months. Having coffee downtown tomorrow. Would love to see you if you're free. Just me, no agenda. Lucy tugged at my hand, pulling me toward the living room where she'd set up a board game. Eli and Jessica followed, arguing good-naturedly about the rules. I looked back at my phone, considering. After a thoughtful pause, I typed, 1 p.m. at Riverview Cafe. I set the phone down and joined my chosen family at the coffee table, the compass in my pocket a small weight against my hip. Family relationships don't have to be all or nothing. Sometimes they just need to be rebuilt with better boundaries. The question isn't whether blood is thicker than water, it's whether any relationship adds more peace than pain to your life. That answer is always worth finding.